Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Open Tabs podcast. My name's Joe,
My name's Billy.
and we are excited to be at you again today, Monday, June the 22nd. You know, Billy, during COVID, RV sales exploded. It was hard to find campground
Arby's.
spaces.
You mean the
RVs,
roast beef
no,
sandwich?
RV, recreational
Oh,
vehicle sales.
I'm like, why is
It
everybody
was
eating roast beef?
during COVID. No, but it got really popular, the recreational vehicle trend. But I just read in the news the other day that RV sales are now slowing down tremendously. So you know, we're going to talk a little bit about today the road trip culture here in America, the RV culture, what's happening, where it's at today, why RV, why not RV, and
So
kind of address some of those big things. We were RV adopters during the COVID time frame. We had already been planning on getting something, but we kind of quickly stepped up the pace over the years after COVID, and so I certainly understand the drive for that.
what
So
the heck is an
Billy,
RV? Let's start there. What is an RV?
yeah, a RV, recreational vehicle. And typically, when you say the term RV, even though boats and jet skis are also technically recreational vehicles, you're talking about campers, trailers, fifth wheels, motorhomes, um, vans, van conversions, all that kind of stuff falls into the
Okay.
typically recreational vehicle arena. Though a lot
Bonus
of people
bonus
now
points.
are full time. Go
Bonus
ahead.
points. What is an RV called in the UK?
Isn't it called a caravan?
Yes, it is. You got it. You got it.
Oh,
Ding ding
uh,
ding.
Um, yeah, so it was a big deal during COVID, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sales were up. I mean, people were buying things at the height of price.
Is that
Um,
now? Now you have an RV. When did you buy your RV? Was it before COVID or after or
well,
during?
so we first started with a pop-up camper,
That's right. I remember.
and we bought that pop-up camper before COVID.
Okay.
And then we decided, hey, we want to do this a little bit more. And so we actually sold that pop-up camper during COVID for more than I paid for it.
Wow.
Because and it was a pretty basic pop-up, but it was a unique size. It had a wider, it was wider than your standard pop-up.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, we sold that for a little more than we paid for it. We used that money to put down on an RV, a motorhome. So we got our first motorhome in 2021. Well, and yeah, right at the beginning of 2021, and we used it for about a year.
Mm.
Took it all over the place. It was a decent motorhome, but it was pretty tiny for our big family. So then in 2022, things were still pretty hot, and we were able to sell that for what we paid for it. Not everything I had into it,
Mm.
but what I paid for it at least.
Still pretty
So
freaking good.
that's pretty good. So that RV only cost me about 1,000, maybe $1,500, to own for a year.
Sure.
And then I got most of that. I got most of what I paid into it back. Now, here's what I will tell you: my now current RV, that is not the case anymore. We upgraded. We bought a nicer RV, but RVs always have issues. And so I'm about $7,000 in, and I paid top of market for it because I bought it still during the rush. And I got to tell you, Billy, RV sales are going down.
Wow. Across the board, huh?
Manufacturers aren't making them as much anymore. New units are sitting on the lot longer. It is definitely not the time to try to be selling an RV, which we have recently decided that's not what we're going to do anyway. So it works out for us. But yeah, now is not the time to be trying to sell your RV if you got into one, because it is a rough market right now.
So are you still using yours as much as before
We
or not at all?
we do. We use ours probably 4 or 5 times during the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
And we use it at least two times during the fall. And so, at least 6 weekends a year, 6 to 8 weekends a year, we are using it. We use it for other things as well. If we, are going over to my in-laws and we want
Mm-hmm.
to spend the night, we'll drive it over there. So we've got some fun traditions that we do with it. Not nearly as much as we probably should be using it to justify the expense, but we do use it.
I would think, I'm guessing completely, but I would think that that's probably more than average for the average owner that has a family and
Probably.
everything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, we primarily use it just for camping trips, weekend
Mhm.
camping trips, state parks, try to keep it as cheap as possible. We keep it local because it is 21 years old now. So I can't depend on it to take me across the country necessarily. And I've had some issues with it. I've had to have things done on it to the tune of thousands of dollars,
Yeah.
work on the engine. And that's one thing that I've learned now. We're kind of stuck where we're at, but you know, an RV, you're mixing a car and a house together, and that can have a lot of challenges that you don't think about. The way that's structured, the way that it works, the things you need to get done to it, just getting it repaired. You've got to go to specialty shops typically because you know a dealership, even if they make that engine, is not going to work on it. All those kinds of things come into play for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things probably similar to getting a used boat where there's so many costs that you have no clue that are coming your way, even if it's in great shape. And typical things cost more, and you got to really want it. I learned that the hard way too. Yeah,
Now, now I don't know if the van life trend is ebbing downward as well.
I don't think so.
Um,
I think it's ramping up. I mean, in the West Coast for sure.
because I think a lot of that has to do with affordability.
Yep.
Um, People are still struggling with affordability of housing, and so that's causing them to push toward tiny living, toward van life. RVs or motorhomes, class ours is a Class A motorhome, for example. But very obvious motorhomes, that's a different animal, right? Those are very different. They can only typically be used for recreation. They're not built to standard building standards, and they look like an RV. It's not going
Yeah,
to look like
you're
something
not
you could park
blending
on the
in
side of the
anywhere.
road.
That's right.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Now, here's
when
what
I
I
went in
go ahead.
when I went into to buying mine, which was a totally different reason, because I've never been married and no kids, just me, and planning to live in it full time. One of my very first requirements was whatever I get has to be able to fit in a parking space, and
Hmm.
that changes everything. So whatever your RV looks like, if it is too big to fit in a parking space, everything changes. You can still do some boondocking, dry camping. You can still stay at places like Cracker Barrel and Walmart, but it changes everything. And when you go to a Class A like you have, if people are doing long distance or full timers, a lot of times they'll bring a car. They'll bring a car
Hmm. Hmm.
because driving something that size around a downtown city or whatnot, parking is crazy. Like you are kind of forced to go to an RV or camping ground, and then you're paying for every night. You might as well be staying in a resort or in a hotel at that point.
Yeah, I would say when you factor in, and this is what I've learned, it really is a decision. It's a lifestyle choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you factor in the gas that you're paying, you factor in campground fees or resort fee, camping resort fees. Um, there is, it is definitely probably a wash to getting an Airbnb
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of cases. Now, a couple of things that I will say, if you're using it for destination camping, like, hey, I know I'm going to a state park, I'm going to a lake, I'm going to whatever, right? Then I would say it's probably less expensive than if you were to try to get a cabin overnight or a hut or something like that, a yurt. Because the campground at a state park is maybe $30, $35 a night. You've got everything you need right there, and you're not trying to go do stuff to go look around typically, right? Your
Mm-hmm.
goal is camping. But you go to a place like Pirate Land Campground in Myrtle Beach, which is a beautiful campground. And by the time you factor in gas and you factor in your nightly stays on their nicer sites, you're into the Airbnb territory,
Yeah.
right? Um, it may be slightly less to be in an RV than it would be to be an Airbnb, but That was a lot of E's at the end. but it is almost a wash. Now, here's what I will say. When we've gone camping, like beach camping like that, you could not get a rental that is literally steps from the sand for the price that we paid all in to have our RV be steps from the
Oh,
sand.
right. So you can just walk to the beach.
Yeah. So there is that part of it, like location, if location matters. There's no possible way. Even we had to have a repair while we were there. So even with the repair, the fuel, and the stay for a week that we had in Myrtle Beach, it was still cheaper than if we were to try to get an oceanfront condo
Sure. That makes
that was the
sense.
same proximity to the water that we had. And there's something to be said about that, because it is really cool to just, go out, walk over, be on the sand, play in the water, come back, shower off of the bathhouse, or on your external shower or whatever. And then, you know what I mean? So there's definitely some benefit, and some cost savings there if you really like being right on the water.
Yeah, and if you're doing the van life, you can do that for free. You can find
Hmm.
free public parking and open the door and see the ocean, and as long as you're legally parked, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So this begs the question, and I think it's interesting, because I wonder what is first in this case. What's the egg and what's the chicken, so to speak?
Mhm.
Um, are Americans by their nature obsessed with driving? And we touched on this a little bit in our last episode, that I really do believe driving is in our DNA. But the question becomes, is it because Americans are innately built for exploration? Or is it because America is so large, and it's like it's just something we're conditioned to accept, that you're a driver, if you live in America, you have to drive. And I wonder which one of those, or is it a mix of both? Because really, as we talked about last time, Americans are drivers typically. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And maybe the answer, is like most things is a bit of both, depending on the person and all that. But I think about my limited experiences traveling in Europe, and when part of traveling in the States, you often don't have any other options. If you want to go and kind of see the sights through a region of the United States, it's a car or nothing. I mean, that's it. That's your
Hmm.
choice. And
Hmm.
so, um, it take it or leave it. Whereas in Europe, you have a lot more options for traveling. And I love traveling on a train in Europe. I've traveled on trains. I've done the cheap, EasyJet, Ryanair, Hopper flights around. That's certainly the cheapest and fastest way now. And then I've driven too. I've rented a car and driven through Italy and Hungary and all kind of places. So there's still a mix, but at least in Europe you have an option, and of course it comes down to whether you're alone, whether you have a friend, whether you're a family with kids. Maybe a budget airline in Europe is great for one person, but if you have a family with 4 kids, it's at that point no. And even nice buses are not considered like ghetto the way they are in the States a lot of times, like a Greyhound we have here. You can have nice buses in places, especially like Southeast Asia. They have luxury buses. We've talked about that. But there is something said for being able, especially someone in my position, for example, where I don't have any ties, I don't have a pet. I got 3 bonsai trees. I can figure that out. That's about it. And I can go. I can just go. I can
Hmm.
hop in my vehicle
Hmm.
and I can just go. And there's something said about that. I don't have to reserve anything. I don't have to wait and figure out an itinerary. I can just drive. And sometimes that's exactly what I do. And I think there is a part of America where we have that. And maybe car ownership traditionally is a little easier for us here because it's built in that way. We don't. It's very common in other countries. Even if you are a doctor or a lawyer, you have money. You don't have to own a car, so you don't necessarily own a car. Here, you
Hmm.
have to, unless you're in the inner city, something like that. You have to imagine where you are. If you didn't own a car,
Hmm.
what would you do? Right?
No,
So
you wouldn't get anywhere.
exactly. So I think it's kind of a both and.
Yeah, it's interesting, how much of America is designed around automobiles,
Hmm.
right? I think back to that speech. I think it was, President Kennedy in the '60s that said a car in every driveway, right? And now it's two cars in every driveway, and it's rare to find a house not built without a garage, a two-car garage for a house, or an apartment complex not built without underground parking or some sort of, what I mean. Everything is built around this idea of vehicle ownership, and people own vehicles. I mean, I work in the automotive industry, right? And in the U.S., the automotive industry is different than any other industry. It's our highest grossing retail industry in the U.S. It's typically the second most expensive thing that a person buys, and they will buy it in basically an afternoon because there's no question you need to have a car to function most of the time in the US. And I think, you know, so it makes me wonder, like, part of that, are we just kind of forced into it culturally because everybody has to have one? But then I also think of just, my own experience as a teenager. And now, as I have had teenagers, I mentioned this before, watching my son be a total car guy. We've never owned a cool car. My father-in-law's owned a couple, which is cool. He's seen his grandpa with cool cars, but he's a total car guy. And I don't know what influence that came from, or if it's just innate in him. But he's a car guy. He loves them, and he, can't wait to have his driver's license full on. Right, already has his permit. Um, Loves driving. Really enjoys driving. And so I think there's probably, like you said, both and, right? There's going to be people who driving is not a chore. It's not unfortunate. They enjoy that piece of it. Now let me ask you, Billy, uh doesn't necessarily have to be in America. I know, like, in Europe, people say if I have to drive longer than 20 minutes, I'm going to take the train or a bus, or I'm going to fly, right? But what is your limit? Like, man, that's too far to drive for you.
Here in the States?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So, when I was working at a company where I was full time traveling, I would, and they were flexible. They let me decide one way or the other. Typically, if it was more than about 6 hours, I would fly.
Mhm, mhm,
If it's not business related and if it's just personal, I would stretch that out to maybe 8 hours.
mm,
And it also certainly depends on if there's any cheap flights and where it is and that type of thing. But 8 hours I'm comfortable with. I can do that. Now the longest I ever did was I drove my camper van from Atlanta to Denver in one shot. That was 25 hours, and I
mm.
was drinking the coffee to make that happen. But any like over 8 hours for me, I think I'm looking at a plane ticket. That's probably more or less where it cuts off for me. What about you?
Well, it's interesting. I have a formula in my head, and it really depends on, you know, uh, who is with me, what we're doing. So, with my family, I think our top right now is about 6 to 8 hours. I think we've driven up to Florence, Kentucky from Atlanta area, and that's about a 7.5 hour drive. And I would say that's about as long as people in my family have a tolerance for. But now that my kids have gotten older, we can get longer stretches. We can drive almost 4 hours without having to stop for anything, and get from one place to another. Personally, just by myself, I always have to factor in all of the time it's going to take me to fly,
Hmm.
and if it's worth doing that, the time and energy, if it's worth doing that. So if I know that it's, 2 hours before the flight, maybe it's a 40-minute flight, and then it's, getting a rental car or whatever is another hour. So if it's a 4 hour commitment, then
You got to factor
I
that
don't
in.
know that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know that that makes sense at that point, to not just hop in a car and drive if it's a 4 hour drive. Um, there are situations, like if I'm traveling for business, there would be situations where I might decide, hey, I don't want to fly out the night before. I don't want to drive out the night before, and I don't want to get up at 3 in the morning. So I might fly then, if it makes sense. But by and large, if it's within, even 5 hours, I will typically drive, um, personally, for work. at that point, it really doesn't make sense to fly. I also do weigh costs. So
Mm-hmm.
typically a flight to a regional airport is not very cheap and there's not very many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not booking like 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance typically. So if it's $500 to drive there, or $350, or I'm sorry, if it's $500 to fly there, or $350 to get a car and go down and come back, and I can make that work, then I'll get a car and just do that. Um, Honestly, I think a lot of times people, it just depends on your personality type, but I've done the bouncing around, airport to airport, cross country, just to get places, from here to there. But even then, there's a lot of times where I will fly into one area and then I will drive to the
Mm-hmm.
next airport and then make stops along the way and then fly out of a different airport. So I think it all depends. But for me, honestly, my longest drive, I drove a car from Atlanta back to Southern California. Um, and I had my brother with me who drove a couple of times, a couple of hours. But I drove most of it. And that was a 29-hour drive.
Good grief.
Um, but not uphill. There's no mountains to really climb. But it was actually it was a fine drive. And even with modern cars today, I feel like you could drive, you know, 10-hour stretches and not have a problem because they
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of the work for you.
Can you remember your first road trip where you were the driver?
Oh, where I was the driver. Trying to remember. Gosh, it had to be college sometime, and I wouldn't say that it was like a very long road trip. It may have been about 4 or 5 hours.
That counts. That counts.
Driving from the San Bernardino Mountains down to San Diego or something like that. Um, and those kinds of drives they're they almost don't feel like road trips because it's like commuter traffic half the way,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not like any open road. So that 29-hour drive may have been my first like open road cross country road trip. Um, and it was with my brother, which was cool. Because we didn't get along growing up. Um,
How
but
was it on that
we
road
had a
trip?
good time.
Did you got
It
along on the road trip?
Yeah, it was good. A funny story though. I drove all the way from Atlanta to Dallas, one shot, one stop for gas. Um, and so we arrived into Dallas really late. It's about a 12 and a half hour drive. Arrived into Dallas, stayed at my aunt's house, ate at Whataburger, decided, hey, um, we're not going to spend the night. We're just going to keep going. So we get in the car and he drives. He gets outside of Dallas proper and gets a speeding ticket
Oh no.
in my car. And I'm like, all right, that's it. Go, move over. I'm driving again. And so then I drove us up to Albuquerque, and then into Kingman, and kind of drove through the night. I think I stopped for an hour and took a nap in a rest stop or something like that. But it was a good drive. My brother and I got to bond a little bit, go through some healing. Um, it was an interesting opportunity. And I think that actually was probably, and this is what's so cool about road trips, that was the time that we kind of reestablished a relationship after having been estranged for a while. Um, and it was 29 hours in a car talking through stuff and, you know, listening to each other's music and, all kinds of stuff like that. And it ended up being a really good opportunity.
That's the thing. Road trips, I've found you really get to know somebody, and that can
Mm,
end up being a good thing or a bad thing. That can end up being a good experience or a bad experience. But either way, you really get to know somebody because at some point during the road trip, you're probably going to see each other happy, sad, angry, excited, frustrated, tired. You get a little taste test of all these different things that maybe you haven't seen before in that person, or there's nowhere to go. Like, where are you going to go? You can't say, well,
hmm
I'll call you back, and then you can have your little meltdown and talk to them the next day. So you can really get to know somebody quickly. And I've gotten really close to folks, or I've decided I don't want to get close to them anymore after this road trip. You know what I mean? And I'm sure vice
Yep.
versa. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say road trips used to be a pretty hard thing for even our family, just because our kids didn't love being in the car, and
Mhm.
when they're little, you've got to stop a lot. That was a big motivator to getting an RV because hey, you could get up and go to the bathroom if you needed to, though you're not supposed to. Whatever, you could grab a snack really quick. You didn't have to be chained to a chair, and for some folks, just being in a chair for that long can be really daunting. But honestly, I think that now some of the times when we've been on the open road, especially because it's usually my wife and I are in the front seat, those are really great times. We get to talk about things that maybe we hadn't gotten a chance to talk about yet. Life is so busy when you're by yourself, or when you're not by yourself, but when you're running a home and you're working and all that, and you have 6 hours, and you may not talk the whole time. You got your AirPods in, for maybe half that time or whatever, but it is cool. It's cool to have those conversations you have been wanting to have for a while, and to debrief and to get that information across. And like you said, I think you get to know someone really well in that time frame. Even when I first started my new job, I got to road trips from Savannah back out to Atlanta with my boss, and just get to know him and talk to him, and have good conversations. And those are the kinds of things I think you really enjoy, and you learn to cherish.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of the few times now that we will have hours with a person, if you think about it. Even if there's naps involved and there's, listening to music involved or whatever, how often do you have hours uninterrupted with a person? Not often. Not even if you want
Hmm.
to, even if you're on a vacation, even if whatever we've got distractions, we got our life. Even a restroom break has to be coordinated. You're together for hours,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it shows you just how much we're not together all the other time,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
love it, and some of my favorite memories with my friends over the years have been in those positions, long distances, even when things didn't go well. That's such a unique time to spend with people. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's
And
time for
I
us to
don't
go on a
know if
road trip.
well, I don't know if you remember our road trip, Billy. But we went to Birmingham, Alabama when we were in high school, if you remember this. Well, I was in high school. I think you had graduated because I was a year behind you.
Was that with
But
Ryan?
no, it's just you and me and your little white Nissan Altima.
Oh,
And
I went a few times with people. I'm trying to, yeah.
yeah. We had a good time. We rode out to Birmingham. We tried Milo's. You showed me Milo's, which I'm gonna be honest, wasn't great. If
No,
I'm being
what in the
perfectly
world?
honest. Uh, we just had a good time, man.
For people who don't
And
know, Milo's is a fast food restaurant, and they have this burger that's got like pickles and onions and brown sauce, and it tastes like a Salisbury steak, and you love it or you hate it, one or the two, and it's got a strong smell, and um, yeah, that's
they're
great.
only in Alabama that I've ever seen.
They do sell
Um,
Milo's sweet tea in the stores
y-
here, which is very
yes, they
good,
do.
but
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah.
So what's funny is when we did that, Billy, I had never been to Birmingham before, did not know anything
Hmm.
about Birmingham. And man, what a cool city that is.
Yeah,
Just with the steel mills and the big, huge mountains. It feels like, I mean, it's a very unique city. And now, anytime I travel into that direction, and in fact, just a few years ago, I was driving into Birmingham, and I thought about that road trip, and I was like, oh yeah, that was my first trip into Birmingham.
mm,
So yeah, that was our first. That might be our only road trip together, actually. We may have gone up to the Dillard House once,
yeah.
which was that
That's
was
a road trip.
that,
That's a fair enough.
that's a road trip. But honestly, yeah, man, I think it's really being on the road affords you opportunities that you just don't get in any other capacity.
Yep.
And as I've been looking back at all these videos of folks from Europe and the UK discovering the wide open country, the wide open spaces, the road trips, you know the highway side stops for different eclectic foods, just how different every state is. The culture and the feel and the vibe of every state is different. It's been fun to watch, and it's helped. I think if Americans are following that, they're going, "Oh wow, yeah." where I live is awesome, and being in America is a great privilege, and having what we have is really cool. You know, an infrastructure that allows us to drive anywhere in the country, uh, largely uninterrupted. Right?
Yeah. And it's boring, but it's
It's
predictable. So, which is probably both a good thing and a bad thing. You can go just about anywhere, and it looks and feels the same. You've got you get off the interstate at any exit in any state, and it looks the same. You've got some hotels, you've got some gas stations, you've got some fast food places, and you can go and do your thing and get right back on. And every one of these exits, they look and feel the same across the entire country.
Yeah. And I don't know how much time you spent in the South, like driving south, probably quite a bit, because I know you spent some time in Florida. What's really cool to me about driving in in South Georgia area and into Alabama is a lot of times directions now will take you off the interstate, and they'll take
Hmm.
you on some cut through, these classic old, you know, 350-year-old towns or whatever it is, and it's just it's really cool to have that experience where, oh, now we're going to go off this, standard pathway, and we're going to go down, through, I don't know, some random town, Sylvester, Georgia, or Bainbridge, or any of those kind of small towns you've never seen before. And that's really a neat opportunity as well. um, and I just think, man, what an opportunity it is to be able to see the world that way. Just
Sure. And when you have the time and especially the mindset to say it's not just point A to point B, which sometimes you have to, but when you can plan in the time to say the journey is part of the experience. I
hmm
am going to this destination, but I'm going to plan time and space to take the scenic route, or to stop at the world's largest ball of twine, or to go to the weird gas station with the whatever. And when you can
hmm
plan that in, man, that ends up being just as exciting as the final destination, you know?
yeah, I agree 100%. Oftentimes, and this is just life, I think, in general, a good life lesson, right? Is it's always more about the journey we're on than the destination we arrive at,
Sure.
because everybody's destination in life is the same, right? There's
Well,
only two
I
guarantees:
guess.
death and taxes, right? So
Yep.
everybody's destination is pretty much the same, as far as their physical body will one day shut down and there be no more, right? Whatever you believe after that, I would say we're all headed that direction, right? And so that journey that we're on, oftentimes that is where the life happens. And the same is true with a road trip, right? A lot of times the life happens behind the steering wheel, putting in the windshield time, finding those cool little, you know, one-off things that you would not see anywhere else, or maybe it's something that's fairly regular that you would see, but you're getting to experience it for the first time.
If
And
you had 2 weeks, if you had 2 weeks and you could go anywhere, a road trip, it could be alone, it could be with a buddy, a family member, RV, rent a car. What would you do? 2 weeks, but it's all on the road, anywhere.
okay, so I think it would depend on who I was with. So if it were like family, 2 weeks on the road, um, we would probably do like DC up into, that area, or potentially out to the West Coast to see family if I felt like they could handle that kind of driving. That's a lot of driving. But if we went 2 week, I think 2 weeks up the East Coast into like Jamestown, into DC, some of the historic sites. That would be a really cool trip because you get to spend time places.
Hmm.
Um, if it were like a buddy, I would say there are definitely areas of the country that I have not seen yet that I really want to see. Where I wouldn't necessarily want to go with my kids, because it'd be like Chicago downtown, or Detroit, or you know, um, maybe into New Orleans. Those kinds of places I think would be really
Mhm.
fun. You could hop in a car, and in 2 weeks you could cover a whole lot of the country that I've never seen before, right? um and and that'd be pretty cool, I think. Just hitting up. What about you?
Well, if it's the States, I have I've seen more of other countries than I have of the States. I've never been to Yellowstone or Yosemite or Grand Canyon. I've never seen a lot of those areas. I've never been to DC. I've never been to Chicago. Um, all of that would be interesting. But I've on my bucket list for a long time has been motorcycles through Vietnam and Thailand. And so
Mm,
one of these days, maybe next year. I've been saying that for a while. I want to do that and cruise around Vietnam and Thailand, one or the other or both. I don't know. And you can do tours and stuff like that. Also, I think it would be really fun to do some traveling in Central America. Like I've been to a bunch of Central America, but to get on a car and just kind of cruise around and go to these little dusty towns and stuff. I follow a lot of people on YouTube who do that kind of thing, and it looks
mm,
really exciting, you know. And you have to be ready for anything. You know, your car is going to break down, or you're going to whatever, and you just have to
yeah.
roll with it.
Well, I have some family that's actually done the motorcycle trip in Scotland,
Whoa.
kind of around the top of the UK. Did some distillery tours, just kind of drove around, saw the countryside, and said it was beautiful. So there's definitely some opportunities there. And it'd be interesting to see, like, what is it? Do people ever road trip around Europe, or is that like something that only an American would think to do? You know what
Of
I
course
mean?
they do. Of course they do.
Um,
I drove from Austria to Italy a few years ago. That was cool, you know.
oh wow,
Yeah, so there's
that
plenty of
would be
that.
exciting.
And with the EU, it's easy to cross borders. You know, you just drive. So you can
Do you
and you
just get one visa and it lets you get into all the
yeah.
countries, kind of thing?
Yeah, if
Oh,
you
that's
go
nice.
as a visitor, you're going if you go into the EU, then you're in the EU. If you're an EU citizen, you're in the EU. It's kind of similar to the States in that sense that you're crossing from one country to another, but you're just crossing. You're EU. So
Interesting.
yeah,
You know, I think as RV sales are cooling off and people are coming down off of this idea of like, do I need an RV for a road trip? I still think road trips are going to be always a part of our future,
yeah,
especially here in the States. And I think it'll just be folks are maybe not doing the RV piece of it, but they're still seeing the country. I think Airbnb has changed the way that we see the world because
certainly.
it's often a lot cheaper. And now hotels are getting in line, and you can find a hotel at just about any price point that's fairly comfortable and clean.
Hmm.
And so I do think, as we're getting there, that's going to be, people are going to be traveling more from that perspective. Um, It'll be interesting to see what high speed rail does in the U.S. They're talking about even in Georgia. They're talking about a high speed rail to Savannah from Atlanta. They've got high speed rail now in Florida from Orlando to Miami. So it'll be interesting to see where that kind of stuff. They've always talked about high speed rail from I think uh, L.A. up to Sacramento, finding a way to do a high speed rail train there. So it'll be interesting to see how we adjust if we ever go, start looking at linking east to west with high speed rail.
We're just so behind compared to other developed nations.
Yeah. Well, and I
We
think
stopped, and
I think it's the surface area,
well,
right?
that works against us certainly compared to somewhere like Europe, but if we had not switched to such a mindset of every driveway has a car in it type of thing, then the train would have developed like the rest, but it's just so the distance, and it's so inefficient when you already have a car that is relatively safe and easy to drive anytime. I mean, let's take Atlanta for example. We have one train station, and it's a mile from where I live. One Amtrak station. There is zero parking lot. We have a train that comes through at 7 a.m. and the same train the other direction at 7 p.m., which never is true. They're always hours late. And that's it. That's it for distance trains.
Mm,
You go to that one spot, you have no parking lot, and you're either going one direction towards New Orleans or the other direction towards DC. It's expensive, it's crowded, it's hours late. It's for people who don't have a car and can't fly or won't fly. and it's just not efficient. And you have some of these ideas just have never fleshed out. Like there is a line that goes from DC to, I want to say DC to Orlando, and you can bring your car. They have passenger cars and then they have cars. And so they drive your car and you can take your car with you. But that's like the only line that does it, I'm pretty sure. And it's expensive. It's like $500 one way to bring your car. And so, yeah, I'm going to go from Washington, D.C. down to Orlando. I'm taking my car with me when you could have flown for a fraction and rented a car when you got there. So it's
Yeah.
just not efficient to be practical at all. It's people do it because either they have no choice or because they're doing it one time only as a novelty. But if we were to catch up, like some of these other countries, it would be interesting what might happen when people have more options. But as it is right now, if I can fly, I'm going to fly. If I can't, I'm going to drive. That's all there is to it.
So this is one question, and then I'm going to follow up with something that might seem tangential or off topic, but I think it is another killer of rail possibility. So if America had European style rails, do you think you'd stop driving? Would you be more inclined to use a rail system?
Yes, I would. Now, would I completely stop and not own a car? That's a different question. But for visiting, let's take regularly. I visit family in Houston. That's a good example. Houston is a 12-hour drive. It's a 2-hour flight. I've taken the bus. I've taken the train, and so I have done all four. I've flown. I've driven. I've bussed. I've trained to Houston from Atlanta. The train is way more expensive and probably not probably was the slowest of all of them by far.
Wow.
The bus was decent, but it's a bus, and I had to lay over in New Orleans for a number of hours. Driving was cool several times when I had a friend with me for the reasons we talked about, singing songs and having a good time. It's a long drive, but with the right person, had a blast. Now, as just by myself, for $75, I can get there in 2 hours, and I live 20
Hmm.
minutes from the airport. That's
Yep.
that's what I'm doing every time. But if they had a decent train, of course the train's not going to be as fast as flying, but if it's as fast as driving ish, so if I could get there in the
Or
10 or
or
12
faster
hours,
than driving.
faster, of
Um,
course, but even if it's
yeah.
comparable to driving, um, I love a train because
Yep.
I don't have to, even with driving with a friend and it's fun and everything, I'm still driving. On a train, you can kick back, you can take a nap, you can walk around, you can have a meal, you can work on work stuff, you can whatever. That's the nice thing that compared to the bus or the plane or the car, the train has going in its favor. So if it's reliable, if it's affordable, and if it's similar to driving, I would probably opt for the train more often, or mix it up, a train there and a plane back, because I love the actual experience of the train. I just can't justify so much more money and so many more hours than even a car would be.
Right. Right. Well, it's interesting in the US, passenger travel is the least profitable train travel there is. Obviously, the reason is obviously Norfolk Southern and the others, they own the lines, and the most
Mm-hmm.
profitable travel is merchandise, is equipment, is um, cargo. And so, dollar for dollar, I think that's why we will never have, at least in our current infrastructure, a really solid passenger system, because it's just not as affordable as cargo. And it's actually why it's so expensive to travel by train, because Amtrak has to come up with cargo type prices to use the rails. Okay, so this is a shift, and I think it might be something that is, it seems to me like the most natural next step in the US, but maybe not something that'll get us closer to better public transportation long term. And that is personal, what they're calling EV tolls, so electric vertical takeoff and landing um, uh, units. These are starting to come out now, or getting close to coming out now. They're not cheap, $150,000, that kind of thing. But this idea of, because I think as much as people love driving, the idea of personal flight is also very tempting to most Americans. And so now you've got this idea that people have had for decades, but it's finally coming to fruition. Where literally, what if you got into you pulled out of your garage in this, you know, person sized drone, plugged in your destination, and all of a sudden you're in the air 350 to 500 feet and you're flying to your destination.
Like Back to the
And
Future too.
yeah, and you're below, air, whatever the threshold is for airplanes. You're around where a helicopter might be, but obviously, whereas distances for a helicopter and for this thing might be 150 miles right now, and in another dozen years or maybe 2 decades, that you might have a 400-mile range on an eVTOL. Well, now that totally changes the way that you do things, right? Um, because, well, we'll see. Because if it becomes too accessible, then it gets crowded. But I
And the
think this
skies
is,
are already quite crowded.
yeah, yeah. I think you're fairly safe at 500 feet, but you've still got to. I mean, there's so many managed airspaces everywhere that if you live by the airport and you take off in an eVTOL, well, you're in Atlanta managed airspace, and you've got to get out of it as quickly as possible if you can get the opportunity to take off at all, right? Um, but I think there's definitely some opportunity there, and I think I see our transportation going that direction. Unfortunately, probably more so than rapid public transportation like we're seeing. I don't know that becomes as big of a reality, just because we're so spread out all the time. Now, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see a high speed train to Savannah. I'd love to see a network of high speed trains that link up between major cities. I think it would be really cool, um,
Yeah.
and could make a huge difference in the way that people travel in the U.S.
Yeah.
But that's
Have
a
you
lot of
seen
ground
have
to
you seen
cover.
Jobby
Yeah,
Aviation?
and
Yeah.
the Uber of the skies is
Yeah.
is headed this direction. Imagine calling an Uber that lands in your cul-de-sac, and you hop in it and it takes off and takes you to Atlanta. What would normally be an hour and a half drive for
Mhm.
me now becomes 25 minutes in a jobby, and I'm in Midtown.
Yeah, these are not theory. I mean, they're testing
This is
them.
happening right in New
Yeah,
York,
in New
right?
York. Yeah, they're pursuing FAA certification as far as I know, and they're planning commercial services. So like booking in an app for an air taxi. But then you've got these personal. This is what's more intriguing to me that you mentioned is these personal drones, because one thing, as far as I understand, is you don't have to have a full pilot license for these like ultralight aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
which I would love to have a pilot license. That's a whole nother story. But to make it available um, to the average person who could afford it or whatever, um, is like it's like a personal drone or like a flying bike. And so, imagine that without a pilot's license, because it does most of the flying on its own, that you could. I mean, this is the biggest step towards something like a Back to the Future 2, where the skies, the flying starts to open up to the average person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all of a sudden you don't need roads anymore. And interestingly, I
Where
wonder
we're
if you
going, we
added
don't
that
need
layer,
roads.
right? I wonder if you added that layer, right? Then all of a sudden you kind of reduce congestion in both sides, right? So you've got people who are traveling in that 300-foot layer, right? And then you've got people now all of a sudden they're not traveling on the road anymore, and you've got maybe a little bit more space there. Be interesting to see what it does over the years, but I do think, you know, I think the main thing is in the US, we enjoy operating machines. We enjoy the experience of driving, of flying, of doing it, right? We are doers. We are not
We
sit
want to be in
back and
control. Yeah.
well, yeah, let's just go right. We want to make our own path. We want to blaze our
Yeah.
own trail. That's part of the American spirit. And honestly, it drives a lot of the innovation worldwide. And I think it is one of the main reasons why, I think it's a big reason why it's hard for something like passenger service to get very, very popular, um, especially as you look out in the more rural areas, because that's, people who are gravitate towards doing it themselves.
Hmm.
They gravitate towards the rural areas, and you're never going to be able to you're not going to be able to convince some of those folks, regardless of age, that the best solution is to hop on a bus.
That's right. That's
Um,
right. We want to be
and
in
so,
control,
yeah,
and even with commercial flights, as great as they have become, and as safe and consistent, there's still no guarantees. Case in point, my buddy came to visit me this past week from Southern California, and Spirit Airline is gone, RIP, but we still have Frontier, and Frontier is a budget airline that's great until it's not,
the
and
bus in the skies.
that's it. That's it. And so he flew LAX direct to Atlanta on Frontier, and it was fine. And then going back, this is the second trip in a row. Going back, there was an issue. So his flight was scheduled to go back Saturday morning to take off at 8:30 Saturday morning, direct back to LAX, and it was planned. He planned it that way because he had a big family reunion to be at Saturday afternoon in California. And so I'm about to drop him off and say goodbye, and he's pulling up the app, and it says flight canceled. And I'm like, that can't be right. You didn't get a text or anything? He's like, no. And I look it up on my phone, just on Google. Sure enough, it says flight canceled. No reason why. And so it turns out they canceled it without warning, without well, maybe they know, I don't know, without warning or without any reason at 2:00 in the morning. And we woke up early, and there we are at 7 a.m., ready to take the flight. And there's no other direct flight on Frontier the rest of the day. And so he ends up getting a refund and then booking for much more money a different flight with a layover, and he missed his family reunion. And that was completely out of his control. There was nothing else on any other airline that was direct that he could have made at that time of the morning yesterday or Saturday morning. And so you think about that, and you're still at the mercy of these things that are out of your control. And so when you have a car, other than getting a flat tire or whatnot, when you have a car, or maybe this idea of this personal eVTOL someday, you get to be in the driver's seat. You get to make the plans. You get to make the detours and the stops. It's all up to you. And when you have that feeling, it's hard to go away from it. So going cross country, that's different. Unless you're spending days, flying is going to be still the most efficient. But as we have more options coming up, and especially for smaller, shorter distances in your own region, it's going to change. And so I would love to see. I'm always up for more options. Give us more options, more trains, more buses, more of these, personal flying type, whatever. Give us the more options, the better. And then we can still be in the driver's seat of planning a route to do our thing the way we want to do.
Yeah, 100%. It'll be interesting to see how things go. But at the end of the day, I think the fact will always remain: Americans like to drive. We don't mind it as much, and there are so many places that are worth driving, and worth seeing. And whether you drive there or fly there, there's so much of America that is on the way somewhere that is beautiful. I would say most of the things that are the most beautiful in the U.S. Are on the way somewhere else, and so it's important to kind of keep that in mind. And I think just enjoy the journey. There's going to be those things, those towns, those gems that you drive through. I drive through a little town called Flaviola almost every time I drive into South Georgia, just the way it works for our where we're located. And honestly, you drive through those, and you see a an opportunity. You get to see a piece of history. You get to learn something new, and you get to enjoy something you've never seen before. And it's really amazing.
Yep. So I want to do a little activity before we wrap up. Rapid fire travel takes. So I'm gonna give you, I'm gonna give us a would you rather. We're gonna fly through these. We're gonna fly through these. Okay. So don't think about it. It's just rapid fire. Would you rather drive 12 hours or fly with a layover?
Oh, probably layover.
Same, layover. Unlimited free gas or unlimited free flights?
Oh,
That's a
I would
tough
take
one.
gas because I don't travel everywhere, but I drive a lot.
Man, I'm taking free flights. I'm going all over the place. Would you rather road trip with friends or with family?
I would say immediate family first, like my wife and kids, then friends, then maybe extended family.
How about, would you rather rent a car or would you use Uber everywhere to go?
Rent car,
Yep.
easy.
I don't know. I'm divided on that one. How about this? I don't know why I even asked this. GPS or paper map?
Right now GPS every time.
There you go. Yeah, of course. How about this? We need to know about this. Know this about you, Joe. Are you a window seat or an aisle seat kind of guy?
I am an aisle seat guy,
Why?
100%. Access in and out first. You get into the head unit, into the unit.
Yeah.
Just I'm an aisle seat guy every time.
I'm an aisle seat if it's 2 hours or less. I'm a window seat if it's longer than 2 hours because I'm going to
Oh
sleep on
yeah,
the. Yep.
fair. That's fair.
Yep. What about this? Early boarding or extra leg room?
I would take extra legroom because I honestly I can travel without a overhead carry on every time. So I would take extra legroom.
Same. How about this? Middle seat for free or pay $100 extra to not have the middle seat?
I guess I would go middle seat for free because I'm cheap.
I'm paying the $100, man. I do not want to be snuggling. I'm not. One long driving day or break it into two. Which you want to get it over with or break it into two?
Gosh, I think I'm on the fence on that one. I could do either or. I think it would depend on the need. But I mean, if I had the time, break it into two, I guess.
I want the one long driving day and get it over with. How about Buc-ee's or a truck stop? Which one?
Well, I would have to say Buc-ee's. I think I'm gonna take the Pier 1 imports of the truck stop world every time.
The problem, I like Buc-ee's better too, but the problem is I can't get out of there for less than $100. So I'd probably be smarter to do the truck stop and get my
Yeah.
$10 worth of snacks.
I can make it into Buc-ee's and just use the bathroom, like I would say 50% of the time.
How about this? Are you shooting for a campfire or a hotel hot tub?
Campfire, because hotel hot tubs gross me out a little bit.
I like the campfire too. We should do a bonfire in your backyard this summer. That would be fun.
We will. I've got the fire pit and plenty of stuff to burn.
If you do go camping, and let's get rid of the RV for a second. If you do go camping, are you doing more of the glamping or are you roughing it in the tent?
Glamping. Hence why we own an RV. I do not camp in tents.
I love it. I miss it.
I would camp in a like safari tent with like a real bed and fridge and bathroom and stuff. Yeah, totally. A yurt all day long. But I'm not sleeping on the ground anymore.
I love
Too old
it.
for that.
I love it. I love the tent for sure. Gas station snacks or restaurant meal?
90% of the time, gas station snacks.
There it is.
I have
That's
an affinity for good gas station snacks.
Well, along that line, are you a Waffle House or an IHOP kind of guy?
Waffle House.
Every time?
No, not every time. Probably not every time. I feel like I have to say Waffle House.
I know. Waffle House has my heart, but IHOP has a pretty compelling menu these days too. Like,
That's
man.
true. And I do have my, I have like an affection for IHOP that stems back to our high school days. So there is that.
Man, and the last couple IHOP visits I've had have been pretty sweet. Last couple, if you have to, would you rather lose your phone or lose your wallet while traveling?
Wallet.
Why?
I have all of my debit cards and credit cards on Apple Wallet, and even my ID. I keep a picture of my ID in my phone.
Smart.
So I could get home with my phone without my wallet. I've done it actually. I've gotten on a plane without my wallet before, if you can believe that. So I can get home without my wallet. I'd have a hard time getting somewhere without my phone.
On that airplane, are you going to go for the seat kicker behind you or the screaming baby right next to you?
I'm good with a screaming baby. I don't care if you're kicking my seat. I mean, I care if you're kicking my seat.
Right.
I don't like, but if a baby's screaming next to me, I'll try to make it laugh and I'll just put in my AirPods and call it a day.
Man, only travel by car or only travel by plane for the rest of your natural life?
Car.
Car.
Well, wait a second. I mean,
You can't drive to Africa, buddy. So
yeah, I was gonna
that
say,
limits you.
but do I get to take a plane like to Walmart? How do
What
I get to
for
Walmart?
no, just for traveling, just for traveling.
Yeah, probably plane.
Although I said that, but I've been listening to this song. I don't know if I can play it in post production or not, but the song is "I'll just take the 85 to Africa," which is geographically impossible from Atlanta to
But it
take
sounds
the
good.
I-85 to Africa. But I freaking love that song. It's so good. Look it up. Never travel again, or never eat at restaurants again.
Oh, geez. I like some eating, so I would stay home for the rest of my life if I could eat at restaurants all the time.
Man, and think if you are able to travel, that
Wait,
still
I
means you
take
can't
that
eat at
back.
restaurants.
Wait a second. I
Okay.
take that back. Because my wife is such a good cook,
Mm-hmm.
and make this a reel so this is the one I can show her. Because my wife is such a good cook, I think I could live without restaurants again for the rest of my life. Because she's such a good cook, I could just live with her food for the rest of my life.
I will vouch for that, and I will give a shout out to her for the Thai chicken tacos, for the split pea soup. There are so many, for the only to this day Brussels sprouts in my entire life that I actually enjoy, and the list goes on. Hit me up and invite me to dinner soon. So,
Anytime, man.
that was awesome. So that's it for our activity.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Another episode of the Open Tabs podcast. Getting a lot more about travel. I think we're finding a little niche here talking about traveling and road trips, and I think we're getting close to maybe needing to take a road trip on our own here.
Agreed. Let's take this podcast on the road.
So maybe here in the next couple of episodes, you guys might see us on the road together. You can always find us where fine podcasts are found. And thank you guys for watching. Feel free to leave a comment on YouTube, subscribe, like, hit the little bell thingy, I guess is what you're supposed to say. I don't know. But thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Adios. See ya.